Well, good morning, everyone. First of all, let me say that just because I'm standing does not mean everyone else has to. Everyone deserves to set the rules. I'm Podrick Kenny, the director of the Russian East European Institute, and it is a real pleasure to welcome you to this year's Lessons from Post-Communism Roundtable. We've been doing these roundtables now since 2000, I believe, and I was just looking over the variety of topics we've had each year. They include nationalism, the left and right, inequality, culture, gender, public space, public health, Islam, citizenship, and several on economic issues. That's the short version. Of course, each one had a much richer title and more nuance and so on. And the purpose has been from the very beginning, well, to think about post-communism, I guess, expansively in time and space. On the one hand, post-communism is kind of a moving target. Things get more and more post each year, or maybe they do, and there's always an opportunity to ask, how have we gotten farther away from communism? But also, and this is extremely important, that the post-communism rubric has been a way to link together the areas that are part of the world covered by the Russian East European Institute, Russia and Eastern Europe, in case that was not blindingly obvious, as well as two areas that lie at our borders, or farther to the east and south, Central Asia on the one hand, and China and East Asia on the other. And especially with the relationship to China, I recognize everyone can say, well, right, it's post-communist and so on. But I was thinking about this yesterday and realized that actually post-communism is a perfect term to link Russia, Eastern Europe, and China. Precisely because it is a term that one could question. So we can say, so is Eastern Europe or Russia, are they really post-communist? Have they left post-communism or left communism behind? And on the other hand, one can say, well, if China is post-communist, then what is communism, or what was communism, and how can you tell a country still is communist? What does it mean to say that? So actually, it is a really useful term, even if different regions are approaching it from different directions. What I'd like to do is simply lay out how things are going to look more or less over this morning, and then I'm going to introduce all of the panel, just to make things simpler. So first of all, the back history, which right, before I forget, yes, a sign-up sheet is already going around. I don't even have to mention it because it is going around. We appreciate you signing in so we know who is here. Thank you all very much. And if it doesn't somehow get to you, please do seek it out. First of all, the prehistory of this year's roundtable is that back in the fall, we asked two conveners of the roundtable, Scott O'Brien and Daniel Cole, and I'll say more about them in just, actually maybe this is as good a moment as any. Scott O'Brien and Daniel Cole to prepare the agenda for the conference. And Scott O'Brien, who is with us at the far end of the table, is an associate professor of history and also East Asian languages and civilizations, and a historian of modern civilizations or cultures.
It's cultures.
It's cultures, but civilizations too. Why not? Historian of modern Japan, who is the author of a book, "The Growth Idea: Purpose and Prosperity in Post-War Japan," and is now currently working on a book originally entitled "The Air of the City," which focuses on urban climate change, built landscapes, and the history of Tokyo. So his interests range across economic history, social history, and environmental history, among others. His co-convener is not with us today. He's actually in the hospital. We hope to hear that he's doing fine. Daniel Cole, who is an expert on environmental law and economics, and joined the Indiana Law Faculty and the School of Public and Environmental Affairs just this year. Before this, he was at the law school in Indianapolis. He has written about Poland and Polish law, environmental law, the author of 7 different books covering issues in law, economics, politics of property, natural resources law, land use, etc. So they prepared what we call a provocation, a short statement of, I think it was around 1,500 words, laying out some issues in this year's topic on energy, environment, conservation, and so on, focusing in particular on energy. And then they chose whom they'd like to come and join us to talk about these issues. And we generally want to have, first of all, people who are recognized national or international experts, and that was certainly no difficulty and ably met in this case, who deal with as many of the different regions as possible. And there are 4 different regions, 3 faculty or 3 experts. They're not going to quite reach all of those areas. But our experts, let me now quickly introduce them. Their job was to prepare a response to the provocation. And like the provocation, they're not going to be reading them, at least I'm pretty sure they're not going to. If you did not read them, they've been online. I think you will get enough information from what Scott has to say, from what the respondents have to say, and from what they have to say. So I don't think anyone will be lost. So I think I will go heading away from me, especially since that's also the way I have it listed on my sheet of paper. Nearest to me is Judith Shapiro, who is director of the dual degree in Natural Resource and Sustainable Development at American University. She's an expert on Chinese history, and she is the author, co-author, editor of 6 books. I think a few of those titles will give you a sense of the kind of areas that she has dealt with. Mao's War Against Nature, a very important book, which was one of the signal reasons that we're particularly excited that she is here with us today. Cold Winds, Warm Winds, Intellectual Life in China Today. Debates on the Future of Communism, a co-edited work. As well as, I didn't realize this until just a couple of days ago, that the first book, Mao's War Against Nature, also inspired a documentary film, Waking the Green Tiger. Can I get that on Netflix?
Yeah, not yet.
Okay.
But if I'd known, I would have brought you a copy.
Okay. But I can put it on my queue?
Yeah. And tell them I have a new book coming out in 2 months.
In 2 months.
It's called
China's Environmental Challenges.
Yes.
Yes. Expected to be published this year with Polity Press. Fantastic. So that is a perfect connection. Thank you for filling that in. Maybe I would have got to it, maybe not. Next to her is Peter Rutland, who's professor of government at Wesleyan University. His research is on Russian politics and other things Russian. He began studying workers and the Communist Party, a field very close to my heart, and has moved on to broader issues of economic policy, and more recently towards issues of energy, environment, and so on, as well as working on nationalism and on ethnic politics. And beyond Peter, well, I will skip over Matt just a second. He's not even there.
I just worked at the laptop.
But just beyond him is Peter Thompson, who has just retired from the World Bank, where he was director of the Sustainable Development Department of the Europe and Central Asia region, where he dealt with the 29 countries. Well, there were 29, there were 28 of Eastern Europe and the CIS, so there must be one I was missing. Dealing with issues of energy, transportation, water and sanitation, agriculture, rural, urban development, all the things that the World Bank does in those areas in his field. And therefore has not only been studying the region, but has also had a significant impact on it. And I guess if retirement made it a little bit easier for you to join us, then we're doubly congratulatory on your retirement. So they all wrote short papers, and then we turned it over to 2 IU experts, one of whom is here and one of whom will be impersonated by me. And they have responded to the responses to the provocation. So with us in the middle of the table here is Matthew Auer, who is professor in the School of Public and Environmental Affairs, and also the director of the Hutton Honors College here at IU. He works on issues related to foreign aid, sustainable development, forest policy, energy efficiency, environmental education, and so on. And in relation to his environmental interests is also one of the reasons that he's come to our part of the world, because he's written on issues like this in Poland, among others. And I'm grateful for that attention to Poland. Thank you. The other respondent is Gardner Bovington, who is not here, but I'll be reading his response. Gardner Bovington is Associate Professor of Central Eurasian Studies, and he is the author of the book, The Uyghurs, Strangers in Their Own Land, which came out in 2010. And he currently teaches courses relating to, including, among other things, relating to energy policy in China. So the format then is going to be that next we're going to hear from Scott O'Brien, who on behalf of the conveners he's now our moderator, and he's going to have some comments setting out some issues for today. Then our invited guests are going to remain silent still, while Professor Auer presents his response to their responses, and I will read Gardner Bovington's. And then they will finally get their say to be able to flesh out some issues from their responses, to respond to what they've heard. And we hope that in this way, I mean, I recognize that the response perhaps may seem rather rebarbative, but the effect should be that built into what we're doing is going to be constant response to one another. It's really, we think that, and actually experience has shown that's impossible in this format, to simply sail off on one's own with one's own agenda, because somebody's responding to you, you've got to be responding to someone else. Constant challenge and re-challenge.